what we're going to do is I'll quickly do an introduction for Sharbani. Sharbani is a UX practitioner who enjoys problem solving both on the micro to the macro scale. In her current role as director of design operations at Australia Post, she is working to embed design and customer-centric strategy into decision making. She's a firm believer that diversity leads to delightful solutions. She focuses her efforts to build teams and team culture for better problem solving. She has a bachelor's degree in architecture and a master's in human-centered design, and she's been practicing design for over a decade. She often volunteers her time to mentor young, culturally diverse students and new professionals trying to get a foothold in the Australian job market. When she's not donning her corporate hat, she can be found taking lessons on life and beyond from her 7-year-old. And with that, Shivani, I would like to hand over to you. I'm sure there's lots of lessons for us to be learned from your lessons.
Hopefully. Hi, everyone. Well, let me just start sharing my screen first. Give me a second. Vanya, just let me know when you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Awesome. All right, before I tell you a bit about myself, let me start with a small story about my friend Gina. So Gina is a quintessential community activist who tries to do her bit in everything. So when the pandemic came, she started to sew. And so she did about 30 odd cloth masks as prescribed on the government health websites, which were distributed to friends and neighbors. Then came her first trip to the supermarket with a mask on. And she did a complete product recall from all the 25 people she had distributed the mask to. The problem? No breathing room. The mask stuck to her face, rubbed her lipstick off, and sometimes slid down her nose. I think we all have experienced that sometime or the other. So, after some trials, she came up with this. Now she's very happy with the outcome as her lipstick stays intact and the mask stays on top of her nose. Funnily enough, this is exactly what design teams in an enterprise face every day. In an urgency to hit the market, we often go the prescribed way without having the time or room to question it. However, we do not have the luxury of a Gina to pivot and put on a new product the very next day. In summary, there's no breathing room for design to conceive and execute a delightful solution. Good morning. I'm Sharbani Dhar. I'm Director of Design Operations at Australia Post, an enterprise that has been the backbone of Australia for over 200 years. I started my career, as Vanya mentioned, with a bachelor's in architecture and moonlighted as one before pursuing my master's in human-centered design back in India. And I've been working as a UX designer and researcher for over 12 years now in various capacities. Currently, I'm looking after the design operations for the digital team at Australia Post, which means essentially I've worked towards improving processes in terms of design processes and how they embed into our development processes. So today, I know ideally we should have been giving you a tour of our studios. However, I'm unable to do so for obvious reasons of a lockdown, but also because we don't really have a studio. Our designers, instead of being enclosed in the four walls of a studio, work in the open, collaborating with our customers and teams to come up with ways to make the lives of our customers easier and our business sustainable for the future. Therefore, I'll be taking you through a few case studies today on how we've created breathing room for design within our enterprise. To be honest, it's been a journey of trial and error, and it's a journey that we are continuously trying to improve. There are some of our learnings which I have tried to capture in this presentation for all of you who might face similar challenges in the field later on. But first, a few facts about us. We are 210 years old. So yes, our first Postmaster General, Mr. Isaac Nichols, was in fact a convict. He was transported to New South Wales for stealing. Nichols was responsible for collecting the mail from newly arrived ships and distributing them. From the first post office in George Street, Sydney, we are now over 4,300 post offices, spread across 2.9 million square miles. Our post offices are the lifeblood of rural Australia. They're the key enabler of e-commerce, from small businesses to large enterprises. And our customer is everybody, from the tech-savvy millennial in Melbourne to the lady knitting baby jumpers in Keverkura, where the nearest town is 700 kilometers away. A continuous insight we hear from people in our research over the years is that when banks close, people are not really worried. But when a post office closes in a rural town, people get very worried. Because if they don't have a post office, they feel that they are not going to exist as a town anymore. So that is the level of trust and responsibility Australia Post shoulders. Last year, we spent 3.3 billion items across 12.1 million addresses in Australia and 214 countries across the world. It takes a lot to run a business of this size and a network of this size, and making change is very hard. Believe me, there are days when it feels like we are working with technology that was set up by Mr. Isaac Nichols himself. Having a large footprint means we have multiple operational complexities. And being a government entity means stakeholder management is often old school and a constant turf war. I think we all know this person, our beloved Prime Minister. Even he's not new to turf wars.
Has been delivered. 10,000 Australians.
Can everyone get off the grass, please?
Sure. Let's just move back from there.
Hey guys, I've just reseated that.
Please, off the thing.
Sorry, mate.
All good? That's all good. Thanks. So it's the projects that count. Make sure you get off that bloke's lawn. Has been delivered.
As you can see, every established enterprise has to face its fair share of get off my grass moments, no matter how high a purpose you're trying to deliver. As the digital team at Australia Post, we are the facilitator of experiences. It's our job to connect customers without them having to come physically to us. Most importantly, we are the key channel of communication in emergencies, bushfires, floods, and even a pandemic. The digital team is more than 500 people working across 20 plus engineering teams, spread across 4 to 5 major programs of work in the enterprise. For delivery, we follow the Scale Agile framework for enterprise, which is essentially a framework that allows complex enterprises to adopt agile methodologies within their development teams so that they can function in a lean manner and achieve business agility. The digital team, in a nutshell, now to enable this sort of agile model for the digital team, we plan our work every quarter, with check-ins every 6 weeks to reassess our progress and planning. Now, each team plans its work for every milestone that needs to be delivered at the end of 3 months, and then ties it in with all the dependencies of the other teams. However, fitting experience design into SAFe has been a constant trial and error, as SAFe is essentially a software development methodology. With a really large brick and mortar enterprise with customers of various digital aptitude across the country, legacy tech and old school stakeholders, it has been a very interesting challenge in not only how we build working software, but how we even design that software in a way that it is simple, useful, and delightful for our customers. So let's look at the first trial we had. The digital vision. When SAFe was adopted, UX was just a tiny dot on the Agile framework. Experienced teams would work at least a quarter ahead in an almost a waterfall fashion. This was the time we embarked on a project to provide a more personalized experience for our users with a personalized dashboard that was a real-time reflection of their interactions with us. We had good engagement with product teams, but late engagement with technology. As a result, design was isolated, as fitting into the framework was really hard, which meant that while we built this amazing vision of a highly personalized and engaging dashboard, We realized it would take around 3 years to build the technical capability and integration we wanted. We would create beautiful, shiny visions, take them to stakeholders for funding, but they would be unrealistic to deliver. Our execs would demand, "Where's that beautiful thing you promised?" And engineering would say, "We can't deliver that." The lesson that we learned: don't create a vision that looks amazing in a room. Create a beacon that teams can continually look at as they navigate through organizational complexities. Also, early collaboration with tech teams ensures that technology is as much a partner of the early design process as product is. So, on to our next trial. We had to improve the content we surfaced in our tracking so that it's absolutely clear to our users where their parcel is at. We thought, now, this is a small problem to solve. Just content, right? We can do this with just-in-time design. As the name says, this is where we trial design and tech working truly agile. Designers whiteboarded solutions together with development and product and released iteratively. This made experiences a lot more technically feasible, and the level of engagement with technology was great. Also, we could release very quickly and fail very fast. But our solution started to turn out very tech heavy. There was barely any time for customer focus. The calls to our call centers asking, "Where's my parcel?" shot through the roof. Our partner channels like retail and of course the call centers had to bear the brunt of our quick experiments, which were expensive to manage at their end. Not having the thinking space to take informed decisions meant that our approach was way more reactive than proactive. We therefore did not have the time to research and implement cross-channel initiatives, or even really assess the impact of our quick experiments on partner channels before a release. As a result, design team as a whole was siloed. This often happens in a lot of enterprises which are driven by digital, but do not have the time and capacity to integrate with other channels. Result, half-baked solutions that lack viability, and therefore, we learn the hard way that cross-channel initiatives in an enterprise need breathing room for proactive problem solving. Unless you have that, you will only be designing for surface level solutions that don't solve the core problem. Which brings us to our next experiment, the design sprint. We want a thinking space, the space that allows us to take time with our partner channels and implement change. So that's when we decided to implement the design sprints. We wanted to uplift a small business platform, hence set up design sprints to work out what that uplift should look like. This allowed us to set dedicated time and partner with our operational and retail channels to problem solve. It was great, as it brought everybody on the same page regarding the vision as well as the feasibility. But what we did not realize was that design sprints were good, but they were not appropriate for our team maturity at that time. We understood the hard way that while they are great for solving small problems, they are not ideal for tackling complex issues. The expectation was that we would solve everything, which clearly it did not, because the complexities were way too immense to solve in a 5-day sprint. We were also too optimistic. We jumped into the latest trend and tried to jam it into our way of working, investing in this approach in terms of people's time and resources, which, believe me, can be really expensive, without a clear focus of the problem that we were trying to solve. Finding the right method for the problem we are trying to solve is important. And while you're going to try something new, start small, prove out the value, and then scale up. Don't jump all in, invest heavily, and burn that method as a viable option when stakeholders see nothing for their investment. So, what is that sweet spot? What is that cadence that allows for thinking time yet enables quick delivery that is inclusive and enables collaboration with engineering and cross-channel product partners, and that enables the right tools and methodology for the problem. What is that sweet spot that allows for that breathing room to create delights and eventually allow design to inform strategy? That is when we decided to go dual track. Now, this is where discovery and delivery run parallel without a time dependency on each other. While experience continues its discovery towards an evolving vision that teams can use as a beacon, delivery becomes the incremental realization of that vision. As part of discovery track, we kick off end-to-end research and design activities that would ideally be at least, say, a quarter or 6 weeks in advance before delivery kicks off. Once we start to uncover insights, the delivery teams can then start to pick them up as opportunities for quick wins. As the research gets more mature and findings get meatier, delivery can then start to plan for bigger pieces of work. Why this works? Essentially, removing the time dependency between experience, research, and delivery allowed us the breathing room to think, unpack, and invite cross-channel collaboration. Continuous slicing of learnings from research into smaller pieces of delivery allowed delivery times to work towards more meaningful outcomes. And identifying quick wins also allowed for quick, not so expensive fails, while making time for research to delve on the more complex problems. So, how does this really work? Let's look at the double diamond for a bit. I hope you all know about the double diamond. So the double diamond is essentially how we fit our design and discovery into our ways of working, where the first half of the diamond is about learning. And this is where the discovery track kicks off. And then the create half is where the delivery track kicks off. So this is where we actually start to create. So learn is when we spend time understanding the problem, learning as much as we can about it so that we can begin to create. Now, when I say discovery track, I don't mean that this is the activity that is solely owned or run by the design team. In a similar way, the delivery track is not solely run by technology. For this to work, it is of utmost importance to identify the right balance of people driving the right paths. The participants of discovery track are therefore the product managers from viability, software architects from technology, and design leads from design driving the research and vision setting. The participants of delivery are, say, the business analysts from viability, the developers from technology, and designers from design driving the delivery and optimization. Now, this is important. While these two tracks run parallel, we've got producers, iteration managers, and leads who become the connectors of the two tracks. Having roles that work upstream, roles that work downstream, with connectors in the process who ensure that there's a constant dialogue happening between the two, facilitates a space for breathing room to focus on the right parts of the process. We tried this for the first time with our mail redirection service. So now when you move houses, you apply to have your mail redirected to your new address with Australia Post. Incidentally, it is also one of our most expensive services that we provide. Unfortunately, it also drives the maximum calls in terms of customer complaints. When we kicked off the discovery track, we were starting off with an unclear problem, an unclear solution. We knew that our customers were complaining, but that wasn't the problem. That was a symptom. Kicking off discovery first allowed us to separate the problems from its symptoms, to see what's really impacting our customers and the staff. Once we started to unpack the underlying problems, we started to feed any quick wins into the delivery track. For instance, we realized that typing mail redirection form in Google would point users to a PDF form instead of the online form. A simple switch in SEO was a quick win. At the same time, we also found that 30,000 customers were actually forced to call us as they were unable to verify their identity online, owing to special ID requirements. Now, this allowed us to identify a tangible opportunity which we could add to our delivery backlog. As we continued to clarify problems through the discovery track, the delivery track could keep pulling in opportunities that they could solve together as a team. As solutions kept getting clearer, we set up a regular cadence of testing to fine-tune them during development. Most importantly, based on our research and analysis, we were able to set up the right measures of success, which became our criteria to continue optimizing post-start delivery. So far, having the breathing room to collaborate and proactively work through dual track has allowed us to build partnerships instead of having a handed down list of requirements. It has established a continuous culture of measure and learning, and it has allowed us to prove the value of design and experience to the point that now design can inform strategy. So, what does this mean for all of you? All these trials of problem solving while trying to create delight, what does this really mean for you? You need to find a sweet spot that works for you. Whether it's a brick and mortar enterprise, which has multiple operations trying to work together, or a purely digital enterprise, nothing will have a prescribed process. You need to carve out the way that works for you. Some of the things that work for us. A framework is good as long as you allow a bit of push and pull into it. To create breathing room means not being a fundamentalist in agile or even design thinking, but identifying what works best for the opportunity. Don't drink the Kool-Aid just because the preacher says. Have partnerships that allow for that push and pull. We as design can't sit in a corner and complain that we don't get heard. In the beginning, we were asking for a seat at the table without really offering a chair at our own. Getting out of that mindset and having partnerships enabled us to build and try different methods and experiment. Knowing that different roles in the organization work better at different instances of problem solving. Identify them, utilize them, but also bridge them so that one role in one part of the process is not disconnected from the other. Agree early on regarding what metrics you want to deliver on. Validate their relevance as part of your research and implement and monitor them as part of your delivery. Finally, do not forget, it's never over. It's a continuous process of improvement and learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharbani. That was very, very interesting. In fact, I was thinking that, we take it for granted that we put something in a red box and it'll reach the intended place all by its own, and we don't really pay thought to how it actually happens. And I think your presentation gave us a very good idea of what happens behind the scenes. So I think it was definitely an eye-opener on how the teams at AusPost work. In fact, in our design studio, we worked on a quick design sprint, but obviously ours was a slightly longer one. It was a 2-week long sprint. So I can imagine how hard it would be for your teams to work on a 5-day sprint. But yes, so I would like to invite any questions if anybody has any questions for Sharbani or any thoughts on the design process or anything at all. Any feedback or there must be some thoughts on what happens or how as a designer we can be involved in the working of the company.
I have some feedback just for like the overall presentation. I thought it was really good and quite engaging. Like it was really cool to see just like the little bubbles and whatnot. There wasn't a lot of text, which I liked.
Thank you for that. And I hope you can take away something from it.
Sharbani, in fact, I was wondering, you mentioned that, you've, as a studio space, you don't work in a studio space. But obviously during COVID, I mean, everybody got used to working from home or working online. So, being in their own space and yet being in the office, so to say. So did COVID affect how your company works at all, or did it not make too much of a difference for how you guys work?
Very good question. It did, to be honest, because Australia Post is quite old school, or rather, we were quite old school in ways of our working. There was a lot of resistance from, in general, from teams about remote working, and also we didn't have a very robust setup of remote working, because I've worked in places like Telstra and ANZ, which are a lot more global because they've got offshoring teams and things like that. So they are set up quite well when it comes to remote working, whereas we were not. So it was quite a lot of mindset change, and suddenly everybody had to be remote and everybody had to work through, cloud-based platforms, which was, in a way, it was a good awakening call for us. And I must say that all the teams actually came up to the task really well. Um, and The adoption to the remote working platforms was quite quick, sorry, and it worked really well. Some of the platforms that we use are Miro as well as Figma for our design processes, which actually are really great platforms when it comes to collaborative working. So teams could actually have proper conversations, and they could actually brainstorm together on, softwares through Miro as well as Figma, which allows for, a lot of collaborative working, both in terms of designers and content as well as developers. And then another challenge that we faced, which was really significant, was how to carry our research, because we were used to going out in the field researching, going out to our distribution centers, going out to, our post offices and observing people, interviewing customers, and actually have them come to the office, showing them prototypes and things like that. That became a big challenge, because now suddenly we were logged out of our distribution centers. They had to follow social distancing, they had to follow very strict COVID guidelines. So they couldn't have any visitors, and they were already running short of staff because of social distancing. And you all must have felt it, because I'm sure all of you must have had your parcels delayed, and they must still be getting delayed for some reason or the other. And that is not because we are being lazy. I must let you know, it is simply because we've got enormous volumes, and things have actually gone up instead of going down for us in terms of the pandemic. But it is really hard to support that with, social distancing and the regulations that the government has set up. So what we did was we actually got a bit more used to remote research platforms like User Zoom, as well as Look Back and things like that, which allowed us to do remote researching. And when it came to talking to our staff, there was a frontline group which was set up, where we invited some representatives from our field staff who would log in once a week, and they would be on rotation for an hour, where we could actually test out our ideas with them. So there were quite a lot of things which were put in place, and now I think after a lot of trials and errors, now they've started to work quite smoothly, and we keep improving on it. But yeah, it has been an interesting challenge to solve.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. For most of us, it was, quite a learning experience. And even for us, like teaching, it was all supposed to be face to face, and then all of a sudden switching to completely online. It did take a lot of, the beginning few weeks, I would say, or even months for that matter, were a bit of a tricky situation. But I think slowly we all got used to it. And like you, I'm a big fan of Miro. Miro works fascinatingly, for collaborative work. So I can imagine. Yeah. Any other questions for Sharbani?
Yeah, hi. How you going? In terms of, I guess, setting goals and time limits and things, how do you guys go about restricting yourself in some ways to get the outcomes you're looking for?
I think what you mean is, how do we prioritize what to solve versus what not? Is that what you are asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Great question, actually, because that is something which is faced by almost all enterprises now. Like, how do you really prioritize in a way that you achieve a good balance of customer value as well as business value? And so we use different methods of prioritization. There are certain prescribed methods as per SAFe as well, which is Scaled Agile Framework for Enterprise, where what happens is once the leadership comes up with, say, these are the problems that we are facing and this is what we want to solve, or this is where we want to head towards the future, we use a discovery track to separate the problems and symptoms, as I had mentioned earlier. And once we understand, okay, these are some of the problems which we know we will be good to solve, we actually have a panel where or rather a session which we call prioritization, where we have equal representation from experienced team, equal representation from product team, and equal representation from development team. So usually there are two each, who will vote on the customer value that we've identified in the problem that we are trying to solve, the business value, what business value it will bring, how much revenue it will generate, and things like that. And customer value is generally how it will make the customers' lives easier. Then there is opportunity enablement, because there are some problems where it might not directly be solving a customer value or business value, but doing that might enable more opportunities in the enterprise. A very simple example would be enabling payments through PayPal in our website. Now, it's not immediately solving a customer value, because customer can still pay by their credit card. It's not earning revenue for the business, it's actually making the business spend money in implementing that solution. But it will eventually enable a lot of other products to latch on to this payment methodology and help the business eventually. So that's called opportunity enablement. And then there is something called risk reduction and time criticality, which is, say our competitor has built something and suddenly it has created a market stir, and we know that if we don't immediately bring out something in the market in a time critical fashion, it will make us essentially, it will keep us at a loss. Same way, maybe there's a bushfire somewhere, and we need to implement something really quickly in our digital platform, so that we can reduce the risk and customers also can know about what's going on. So that's called risk reduction and time criticality. So we actually vote across all these 4 and 5 criteria, and then essentially each of the features that we have proposed, the votes are consolidated, and then the process is called WSJF, which is WSJF, WSJF, which is weighted shortest job first. So essentially, which allows us to understand, okay, this is the highest or most important thing which needs to be carried out across all these 4 or 5 criteria, and this is the quickest win that we can get versus the other stuff. So that's how we start to implement things. Does that make sense? It's a bit complex, but I would highly encourage you to Google WSJF SAFE. So WSJF space SAFE SAFE. And that will give you some good idea about how to prioritize things. So that is one of the main methods that we prioritize. And then there are some smaller ways of prioritizing within the teams. For example, effort versus the value or the impact that we are getting, and based on that we prioritize as well. Does that answer your question, Adam?
Yeah, that covered the question pretty well. Thank you very much. I'll look into the Vistas stuff now after class. Thanks very much.
Hi, Sharbani. I've got a couple of questions, if you can hear me.
Sure.
Did you say you had a degree in architecture?
Yes, that's right.
That's really interesting. How often do you find that yourself still relying on falling back on those principles that you once learned during your undergrad?
That's a very interesting question. I think one thing which I like about studying design, whether it's through architecture or pure design or visual communications or human-centered design, is that at the end of the day, principles always remain the same. In the sense, when you're designing as an architect, you are thinking not just about the time when the person is right in the building, but rather from the time where a person will probably see the building for the first time, to how they will enter the building, what the entry will be like, what will their experience be while traversing through a building or living in the building, and also through, when they will be using the basic utilities in the building. So at all times, you're thinking through all aspects of the process, right to the point of time where they're exiting the building, and or rather exiting the space. And that same principle is applied on a virtual level as well. When you're designing virtually, you are thinking of the time when a customer will encounter a problem. Say, for example, take a very simple or basic example of e-commerce. When you're planning to buy something, uh, so the very first point of time where you think of buying is not when you have already landed on, say, a Meyer.com.au. You will be thinking when you experience a need, like, hey, I have a hole in my pants, I need to buy a new pair of pants. That's the first point of time where you will experience the need, right down to the then you will start your research process. You will try to search, okay, what sort of pants do I like, where will I get to buy those pants, and things like that. You'll probably Google it. You'll probably have certain dedicated shops you go to, and there you will browse. And then finally you will add it to your shopping cart. You will do the checkout, which is more of the utilitarian aspect of things. And then you will eventually get choose a postage, and then it eventually lands up at your home. And even then, the experience does not end, because if there is a problem, you will then call probably the call center, or you will raise a complaint at the website and things like that. So it's that mindset of thinking end to end, which does not ever go away, irrespective of the design education you've had. And I think that is one principle. My architectural education kind of fine-tuned me into that sort of mindset early on. And as an architect, you're always thinking of problem solving. You're always thinking of the experience from a customer's perspective. And that again then translates into pure design, whether it's human-centered design or communication design, anything.
That's really, really cool. Thank you. And I have one more if no one else is, or if there's a bit of space. You're obviously quite a successful designer. I was just wondering, where do you find your inspiration for your work?
I think in every day I really enjoy problem solving, and I think that's what excites me every morning. That the very fact that when you are into human-centered design, there's never a single problem to solve. Every day is a new problem. Every day is a new or different kind of user. And especially at Australia Post, there's not a specific user that we are solving for. Anything that we are building impacts all Australians and everybody of all ages, from a small kid who is waiting for their Christmas parcel to, a really elderly person who might be, buying concession stamps or getting concession services, to somebody who might be buying a new house and they might be filing for land titles. So I think that when you have something of this scale and every day you're solving a new problem, there's never a dull moment. And I think that's my inspiration every day.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And I think just taking on from Adam's question, before you started studying architecture and design, did you imagine that you'll be working in a product and services company like Australia Post?
Not at all. To be very, very honest and absolutely, what do you call, candid about this. So when I knew after I finished my architecture, I really enjoyed my architecture. The only challenge was that I was in India, and there are a few complexities in terms of the way architecture is run as a profession over there. And it's a lovely profession, and it's a amazingly change maker sort of a profession, but there are quite a lot of red tape complexities. And I chickened out. I didn't want to take that hard way. And I knew that somehow pure design was something which really called out to me. So I kind of took it as a challenge because my parents were not at all supportive of me, leaving architecture altogether. Indian parents, they are very specific about what sort of professions their kids take. So I took it as a challenge and filed in for my master's application for pure design. And at that time, I wasn't at all clear about what I wanted to do in pure design. I knew I needed to do something related to technology and communication design. And I was lucky that the institute that I studied my master's in, they allowed for that sort of variation where you start with a course and then you can diversify into animation design, human-centered design, product design, and photography and filmmaking as well. So that's when I experimented with all of them and I realized I really enjoy problem solving the most. So that's where, I gravitated towards human-centered design. So it was not a pre-planned thing, and definitely no idea that I would be working in Australia one day. It was just pure coincidence where I followed my partner. But never regretted anything.
Thanks for that. Are there any questions for Sharbani? Any more questions for Sharbani?
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to ask, I don't know whether I missed this because I joined a little bit late, sorry, but we are a sustainability class, so I was just wondering like how much sort of sustainable design filters into your teamwork and your design decisions. And then as a company as a whole, like, because obviously Australia Post has a large impact on the environment. So yeah, I was just wondering about that.
That's a very good question, and it's a really important backbone of everything that Australia Post does, because to be very what do you call it? Sustainability is something which is not just about surviving as an environment, it is also about surviving as a business. You need to be sustainable in your actions so that tomorrow in the future you are future proof. And that is the philosophy that is extremely important in everything that Australia Post does, especially because we have such a large physical footprint. So if you look at some of the work that's been happening in at AusPost, there's a massive shift towards things which are more around circular design, where essentially whatever we are doing is ending up in a way that is causing least amount of wastage and more around more amount of reuse, as you say. So there are a lot of initiatives, and recently, in fact, I'm so proud to say that we've actually rolled out some of our first fleet of electric trucks for delivery. And we already, if you would have seen your postie, your local neighborhood postie, we already have a massive fleet of postie where we have moved them from petrol driven bikes as well as to electric bikes, where it's easier for them to deliver parcels and they're all electric, as well as the way our warehouse facilities are designed, where they are trying to maximize on natural means of not rather natural, what's a rather better word, so means around solar energy and things like that, because of the kind of massive footprint that we have to generate energy for our warehouses. That is from an environmental way, but also the way we do our processes. So for sustainability, it's really important that there is a clear balance of decision making in terms of business outcomes, customer outcomes, as well as technological outcomes. Because unless you have these three working together, you will never attain sustainable outcomes. Whenever there is decision making which is very heavy in business, it becomes very reactive and profit driven. Same way, when it becomes very heavy in design or experience, then it becomes very visionary and nothing really comes out which is viable, so the future of the business becomes a question. And then when it's very technological, then of course it's tech heavy, customers don't find the solutions desirable, and then again you are not future proof. So in order to maintain business sustainability in all the decision making, that's how we try to formulate the process where there is equal conversation across all our conversations, all our decision making, and there is a very weighed out outcome whenever we are doing our goal setting as well. So when we are doing our goal setting, when we are deciding on the business values, we are looking at, okay, how sustainable it is, how much of money will it save for us, how much of will the revenue that is getting impacted, how will it be reused in the future. When we are looking at customer outcomes, we are looking at, okay, what sort of customer base we have. Our customer base is changing. It's not just about people who want their parcels, it's about people who would actively make a choice in their shopping carts about their postage delivery if it's a sustainable postage. They are talking about there are businesses who are making packaging decisions, and they want to offer sustainable packaging. And if we as Australia Post don't come up with that, or we don't offer our customers that, and our customer is not just you and me, but our customer is actually, say, a Meyer, L'Oreal, or say a Catch of the Day, who are massive, who have massive footprints and massive impacts. So when they say that we want a sustainable choice, our customers asking for sustainable packaging and solutions, so then we have to take those decisions and incorporate that. So it's there in all our philosophy and everything that we do every day.
Cool. Yeah, I just, I mean, it's complicated and difficult, I understand. And I guess also I was just wondering then, like if, because you're very much involved in like the user sort of influence on how the business runs and then how that shapes how you design the thing. But like you talked about competitors earlier, and like I know that Sendle is like offers carbon neutral, or like they have carbon neutral packaging delivery. So like, has there like been any push for that in Australia Post at all? Or I was just wondering about that as well, because
Yes, absolutely. So Australia Post has managed to achieve carbon neutrality for a significant chunk of our business. We do not claim that we are 100% carbon neutral yet, but that's actually an enterprise goal to achieve in the next 5 years. Because, and the simple reason why we don't claim that we are 100% carbon neutral is because that's a big problem that we are trying to solve right now. When you look at a Sendle achieves carbon neutrality because most of their operations are around the metros like Melbourne, Sydney, Adelaide, Perth. Whereas Australia Post is when a postee has to drive 700 kilometers to deliver a parcel, because that's where a person lives from the nearest town. It's very hard to achieve carbon neutrality. Yeah, so these are the problems that we are trying to solve right now, where for our urban businesses, yes, there is a significant chunk of our portions where we have actually achieved carbon neutrality, but there is still much ground to cover, literally. We are getting there.
awesome. Thank you for answering those. It's really interesting to hear about, because it's something I think about a lot in terms of like how businesses are moving forward with sort of sustainable approaches, because something's got to sort of change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one thing which all businesses have woken up to, and I think this is, we all need to keep in mind that sustainability is not just in terms of um, just carbon neutrality, but it is also about how your operations are impacting overall, and how can we achieve more sustainable operations overall, not just in terms of the end product, but rather in terms of your everyday working. So and this is something which a continuous process of improvement helps you to achieve, where you are reflecting every quarter, every 6 months, you're reflecting on, okay, what is it that we did right versus what did we do wrong, how did we not achieve business sustainability, and if not, then what do we need to do next.
Thank you.
And I think, Sharbani, what you said was very interesting because, even in our design assignments that we work on, we try and involve the same sort of back and forth in the process. We have our pin-up reviews and we have our presentations, and there's obviously feedback from everybody. And based on the feedback, we try to improve upon our designs, and then we go back and reflect on how we could have, done it better, or how differently we could have done it, which would have helped us to make our design more sustainable or more efficient in that sense. In fact, I should mention here that one of the teams for the last assignment, they worked on, so they were focusing on packaging, and their idea was that they wanted to create like sustainable rating system. So depending on what kind of packaging you order, there'll be a rating system for each company, and on the basis of the kind of star rating that you get, like for example, we have, our electronic goods have those ratings, so the star ratings, so similar kind of a system where if you order something which is a compostable packaging, or if it's something that is partly compostable, the manufacturer will get a certain rating, and that will, just to increase awareness for the customers. I think that, I mean, it just was a great idea to just help build awareness about the need for sustainability. So I thought I'll just quickly mention that here because it was related to what you were talking about.
Yep. I'm happy to send some of our latest financial release, which and there is because sustainability is so important for our organization, there is a dedicated essentially we specially dedicate an entire section on the sustainability of the business and what all measures we are taking. So I'm happy to release it, share that with you guys after this session, just to give you a bit of a clearer idea on, what are the different measures that Australia Post is taking in terms of sustainability.
That'll be amazing. I think that'll be really useful for us to see. Yeah. All right. If there are any last questions for Sharbani, we can quickly have a run through them. Okay. Thank you so much, Sharbani. It's been a wonderful session, and really appreciate you taking out the time. And I think it's been wonderful to see how Australia Post works because, as designers, how we can get involved and what is the role of a designer. I think it just gave us a very good picture of, a big organization like Australia Post and how it would, what it would be like, in a day in the life of a designer at Australia Post. So thank you so much for that wonderful talk, and hope you have a good day, Sharbani. Thanks.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.